Hi, this is Ken Johnson for another episode of SecCast Live. As I mentioned previously, the first few minutes of this episode were cut off. A couple things to mention real briefly. Our panelist names are Rob Fuller, Robin Wood, Chris Gates, and Seth Law. The episode will be moderated by me. If you are a non security person, you may not know who these guys are. All four of these folks have spoken at either Black Hat, DEF CON, or ShmooCon, or all of the above, and while that does not necessarily guarantee their credibility, although it certainly lends to it, they are all friends and trusted colleagues who I've personally known for years and have relied upon on more than one occasion for help, so I can personally attest to their experience and expertise. Chris Gates joined Facebook in 2014 as an offensive security engineer. Chris has an extensive background in network and web application penetration testing, as well as information operations experience. He's worked as an operator for a DoD Red Team, as well as other full scope penetration testing teams. Chris is a co-founder of Nova Hackers. Rob Fuller is the other founder of Nova Hackers. And Chris runs a very, very, very popular site known as carnalownage.com. I suggest you check it out. It always has some interesting information on it. Robin Wood, more commonly known as DigiNinja, performs security services consulting under his own brand and has released numerous tools, how-to tutorials, blog posts, and spoken at conferences like ShmooCon and B-Sides London. Rob Fuller, also known as Mubix amongst the security community, has contributed to Hack 5, a popular security show you should all check out. Been on countless videos, talks, podcasts, you name it. In fact, in Season 2, Episode 8, Rob can be seen in the credits for the show Silicon Valley, as he was a technical advisor for that particular security-centric episode. Seth Law is the VP of Research and Development at Invisium. Seth is a good friend and colleague of mine who I've known since early 2009. And I've known him as a mentor, inventor, polyglot, and he is generally always tinkering with something new. Seth has spoken at Black Hat and DEF CON and has secured a plethora of organizations which have stronger than normal security concerns and requirements. I'll provide you with contact info and blog links at the end of this video for these folks. To catch you up, we've just asked Seth Law what technologies he is currently interested in. Let's listen in.
I like to spend a fair amount of time actually digging through and building apps in each of these languages to see what the developers are actually doing, and then trying to flip that back to the security side on, well, guess what? All of these are set up insecurely if they're following whatever tutorial that's out there, or Stack Overflow or whatever, right? So I mean, it's an interesting way to look at security in general. A lot of times we get pretty good tunnel vision as to what we're dealing with on a daily basis from a security perspective, and we kind of forget that there's all this new stuff that's coming at us from every direction. Otherwise, in the newer technologies that are coming out, wearables are a big thing for me right now, especially the Apple Watch, right, on the iOS side, and the Internet of Things. Both of those just seem to be exploding the number of devices that somebody's going to have, the number of apps that are running, and they're going to have a lot more. They're going to have a wider view into each of us as a person, from a privacy perspective, from a security perspective. So taking over some of those devices could be very fruitful for us, during a pen test or whatever, what have you. But it's also very interesting that a lot of the people developing these different devices don't necessarily have a security background. So again, it falls back to, all right, what did they use, how did they use it, and where are the flaws in that technology?
Yeah, and you couple what the Internet of Things with sort of what Rob was talking about, and with sort of generic malware, and that gets pretty interesting, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen a lot of hacks against home-based routers and things like that lately, right? People replacing firmwares, or at least modifying firmwares, and I'm sure the same thing's going to happen with the Internet of Things, right? It's inevitable at some point that somebody's going to do that.
Interesting. So, um, I am going to cut over to a question from Mike, an audience member. And I think that, and everybody feel free to chime in here, but I think I'm going to direct this at Chris and Rob specifically. And basically, the question is thoughts on internal red teams and how to properly use your internal red teams. Sort of looking
Go
for an
ahead,
opinion
Rob.
on that.
I'll go second. I'll let Rob go first.
So how to properly use an internal red team. So there's really two models that I think work well, and one of the big things that get in the way of that um, is a charging method. A lot of internal red teams will charge internal parts of the company money to do assessments, and that gets you basically back to the role of being an external team, that they only want to pay a certain amount because their budget only allows a certain amount, and that puts security in the back burner and budget in the front. Um, so
And Rob,
um,
can I interrupt just for one sec? Can you explain what a red team is for those who may not be familiar? Because we actually did have a question on what are red teams.
sure, that definition is quite open. So a red team is basically a pen test team with a bigger scope. So you take the pen test team, which is usually a scanner slash break and shake, one week, 2 week go. Whereas a red team is, I'm going to break into the building, steal a bunch of stuff, then do OSINT, and then maybe fish, and then break absolutely every possible way to get in over the time period available, um, to include physical and such. And Chris Gates has a better, slide from this, for what aspects that includes. But red teaming is basically a larger or longer scope pen test team with better tools usually. Um, so internal team and how to utilize them. So if you get away from the cost model, the best way of utilizing these red teams is going after it on things that are already in place. So you have things that are new, and you want to know the security things, the security mechanisms of the new things you're putting into place, and making sure that is secure. But that's the wrong way to use a red team. Red teams are usually better used on things that are established, because that's when those security mechanisms really boil down, and have problems, right? When someone a year down the line uses the exact same password on two different things, or configures this thing now that the business goes in a different way. If you use it right when you purchase, excuse me, if you use a red team right when you purchase something, a new product or a new setup or new infrastructure, you're not going to get as much value out of it. It's better to do a pen test at that point, or even just a VA. Um, so if you go at things after they are deployed, and you go at them in a holistic view, you go for a specific building or a specific part of the infrastructure, that's great. The other piece that you can use a red team for, an internal one, is a constant um, and open assessment, something that goes year round, that doesn't actually ever end. And what they do is they continually try and get in, try and move around, continue to pivot around different parts, find security vulnerabilities, identify different things, and constantly are reporting and talking back to all of the different businesses that are there, talking to your internal VA team to say, hey, where are you having troubles with getting people to actually change stuff? And then you have the internal red team that has that constant assessment going on, actually target those and show for certain that these are actually bad stuff. So that requires a lot, that holistic, all of the time pen testing view requires a lot of communication and making sure that everyone knows that everyone's on the same side, and that this is happening and going on constantly. And it takes a very good relationship between the SOC and the red team to make that happen. So it takes a while to get to that point where you can do that. But those are the two methods, and I'm sorry to take up too much time, but those are the two ways you can use an internal red team from my point of view.
No, I appreciate the comprehensive answer. I mean, to summarize, it kind of sounds like you want to either have them or constantly poking and prodding, just to expose any weaknesses that might come up, give a realistic view, and the other is to just like you said, focus on just something pretty wide. And I guess holistic's a better way of saying that, but hey, go after buildings 3 and 4, and that's whatever's in there, that's your goal. Sounds like that's kind of what you're saying. So, does anybody have anything they want to add to that?
Sure, I can add a little to that. This is Chris Gates. I'd say, so Rob's stuff was good. Since you mentioned that I had a better definition. From Lars, red teaming is when you're pulling together a mix of physical, social, and electronic, right? So you're using one or all of those various stovepipes to see how vulnerabilities in one affect or create vulnerabilities in the other. So that's the red team question. From a way to use your internal Pentest team or red team better, I think, so I've quickly put some notes while he was talking. So they're good because you can have an internal team for mature environments that actually understand the environment better than a consultant that's there for 1 week, right? So they understand a bit better how to move deeper and further in the network and test more things. Rob's point on doing continuous testing is excellent. That's one of the good ways to use an internal red team or internal Pentest team. Probably most importantly is establishing a good relationship with the people Rob mentioned, SOC, NOC, incident responders, or even application owners, to where you work on getting rid of that adversarial relationship that a lot of times when you bring in external consultants or other teams can have. You don't want to be seen as dropping problems on people and creating work. You want to work with these teams and to help fix the problems that you identify. So I think if you want to run an effective one, that's how you do that, is rather than dropping off a bag of, oops, you suck, you're dropping off a report with recommendations, and then you work with these people to get those things fixed in a way that helps the company out the best. That's probably enough for that.
Yeah, I know that's definitely an interesting thing where you're kind of in this position where you're responsible for helping to fix the problem, and yeah, that definitely is a bit of a challenge compared to just breaking.
It is. I'm happy to talk more on that later, but I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, no, I know we're and actually, so I'm gonna skip to some of our more interesting questions, just to stay within this hour format. So I think the next question I'd like to ask each of you, Seth, we'll start with, actually, Robin, we'll start with you, then Seth, and then I'll pivot back over to you guys, Rob and Chris. So what is the security community, what is the security community getting right?
Well, I think it's maybe a bit of getting right and getting wrong. I think at the moment, hacking everything is something that is probably being done right. Looking at anything, everything, the Internet of Things, any box they can get their hands on. I think doing that is, yeah, I know we've got a question later about stunt hacking, but I think doing that is going to end up developing new tools, new techniques, and sort of finding what some people would say, oh, it's a pointless little issue in that black box, and it's pointless because you had your hands on it in physical access and whatever. But hacking that little black box can then lead to new tools which let you get into the bigger black boxes and the real networks. So I think that's something that we're getting right. Whether the marketing of it, of the sort of the stunt hacking, and oh look, I just popped a shell on my fridge, whether that side of it's right or not, I don't know. But the actual doing it and just getting out there and hacking everything, I think is a good idea, a good thing.
Right. I mean, that's supposed to be at our core what we do, right? We just take things apart regardless of what somebody else sees the value
Yeah.
in us doing that, that's really what we're supposed to do, is to tinker around, see what we can do. So kind of stays within that culture and that mindset.
Yeah.
Seth, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, along with Robin, I love the amount of research that's going on. Anybody that's been in the industry for the last 15 years, 10 years ago, most of this stuff wasn't ever looked at, right? And when I initially got this question, I had to think about it a little bit as far as what we are getting right. And what I see over year is just the incremental improvement, right? The stuff that's coming out of development shops, of industrial, fabs, and anything else is much more secure, and they're actually thinking about security before they release something, right? Awareness is there at least at some level with most shops before they release something. Then they hook it up to the network, whatever that is, and so it's more difficult nowadays to actually find vulnerabilities and things than it was 10 years ago. You're not seeing your basic SQL injections or things like that on the same scale that we did years and years ago. And so I would say it's that incremental improvement, the fact that we are at some level affecting the overall security of devices and programs that are coming out on a daily basis. That's what I see us as getting right.
Yeah, and kind of getting ahead of the curve. I mean, pretty early on, these devices are coming out, and then next thing you know, people are next day going after it. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts on that, Seth?
No, I just think that every round of patching, every upgrade that comes out because of what's happening, makes us more and more secure. Obviously, there are failures. We see that all over the place. If you talk about stunt hacking and Heartbleed or shell shock or whatever it is, there's vulnerabilities that are out there that have been there for years. But then along those same lines, we're getting sophisticated enough, and there's enough people in the industry now that those vulnerabilities are coming to the forefront. Right? You went to security conferences 10 years ago, and you would see, 1/10 of the people that you see nowadays. Granted, DEF CON turns into a little bit of a zoo, but there are so many other security conferences and so many learning resources that weren't available to us when we initially picked up security as a career. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely changed. And that's Rob, you've been involved in so much of the community. I mean, I think I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this. What do you feel like we're getting right?
Sure. So it's a double-edged sword, but adoption and audience are the answers that I got written down here. I think that the security community and just security in general has been the little kid in the back of the room jumping up and down, yelling, "Hey, look at me, look at me!" And we're finally, on the big screen. I mean, literally every single time I turn on the news, it's some stupid thing about cyber, right? So again, positive and negative, it's on the tons of every CEO on the planet. Um, so I think that we're in a great position right now to make the quote unquote Silicon Valley make the world a better place. But we're in that position, and we asked for it, and now I'm curious on how we're going to actually provide that value that we've been saying we could forever. To Seth's point, I think we are getting better, particularly Microsoft. I have to hand it to them. Over the years, it's getting really, really hard to break into a Microsoft box these days. I participate in a competition called CCDC, and unless they give us a way in on like a Windows 2008 R2 or 2012 box with default creds or something, I'm not getting into that thing. We got lucky with a Kerberos problem with MS14068, but honestly, if you're keeping up to date with the Windows, it's getting really, really hard to break into those things. It literally has to be a misconfiguration these days to get that initial foothold. That's really
That's really interesting, by the way. I don't think I would have heard. I don't think having known you for as long as I've known you, to hear you say Microsoft is doing well, so that's a yeah. If only people understood how big of a statement that is from you. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to interrupt. Did you have more to say?
No, that's it. That's what I think we're getting right. I think we're on the stage now, and we asked for to be here, and that's what we got. So I'm curious.
I'm going to move on to Chris, but just so that everyone knows, don't worry. The next question is, what are we not doing right? So that'll probably be maybe just as interesting or maybe more interesting. So, Chris, what do you think we're getting right?
I'll be quick. So I think that the amount of information that we put out to learn is great from the security community. With all blogs, conferences, everything's recorded. Um, there's not a shortage of information to learn topics, which is good. So that's my short answer.
Well, then I'm just going to stick with you. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, what are we not getting right?
Okay, actually, I wrote this one up. So my kind of thing now is we give crap recommendations to clients on how to fix issues. And then we come around later and bitch and moan that people don't listen to us, or that our clients are stupid, or that they just can't do anything right. So we need to do better on giving recommendations on how to fix the problems that we identify. A lot of times we'll put something like, have a better password policy, or harden your routers, or VLAN, do better network segmentation, which is really a non-trivial task, right? Just to tell someone to go segment better and leave them with that isn't a lot of things. So I did write my free idea for that is that companies should partner with the companies that actually want to do that. Most pen test companies don't want to configure router VLANs or create GPOs. So we should partner with those people that do. And when someone needs help, we have a list of people that are ready to go and ready to help them. And maybe problems can actually get fixed so you don't see them the next year when you come back.
See, this is how I know you're solution oriented, when you're giving the solution to how to give the solution.
There you go. Trying to help, man. Trying to be a fixer. It's weird.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can tell you, we see it in the same thing within, application security. You see the same things. Like, you have cross-site scripting, so outputting code. You have SQL injection, so sanitize input, which makes no sense, but all right, cool. Same like generic things, ridiculous password policies and just terrible recommendations. So it is pretty widespread to see that out there.
Yeah, I got my eyes open the last year at Facebook of thinking about all the crap recommendations I wrote, and maybe how they just didn't give them enough information to get things fixed. It was pretty eye-opening to kind of have that realization and try to figure out how do we do better going forward.
Yeah, working on both sides, red team and blue team, that definitely gives you a better insight and some empathy and sort of see things in a different light. So, Seth, any thoughts about what we're getting wrong?
Yeah, I think we all have our hit list on this one. So, my short answer is mass communication with the wider world. Right? If you look at security news and security blogs, no one really cares, right? If you look at the mass audience that we're trying to reach, and as much as we roll our eyes at the branding of the vulnerabilities that come out, at least some of those are reaching a wider audience. Having a logo, having a name for a vulnerability rather than CVE-2015-0100, right, makes it easier for my dad or my grandma to actually recognize that there is a problem out there and that something needs to be done. We do a pretty poor job of educating those that don't have the same level of experience as we do. We're kind of jaded since we've been in the industry for so long, and we've lost some of the real reasons that we're trying to do this work. I mean, really, that's the biggest problem that I see across the industry is somebody new pops up and says, "Hey, I found out about this cross-site scripting thing. This seems pretty cool," and everybody rolls their eyes or puts them down on Twitter because we've been dealing with it for so long, rather than kind of fostering that awareness that should be happening for people that are new in the community, but also wider across the world, actually recognizing that there are security issues and things that they should be concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, awareness is it's I don't know, on the one side, how we're classifying things and how easy and how accessible we make it. I guess it's the accessibility piece of that we're kind of talking about. Kind of speaks to like Rob's point where, hey, people are probably aware, but then making that sort of accessible to the community. Like, I think one of the questions on here is, does the public really care about cybersecurity? And that kind of speaks to it. Understanding why you should care is probably but I'll save that question for later.
Yeah. And I was just gonna, pull it back to what Chris had to say, right? Even if no one really cares, or we're trying to put recommendations out there, we've got to make the recommendations such, and not only for developers or network admins that are trying to fix things, but we need recommendations that are actionable by my grandma, something that she can actually do to be more secure and more aware of what's going on with her information. That's a more difficult problem than someone that's already in the industry and that already understands how computers work. And a lot of times we don't go to that level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Robin, your thoughts? No, and by the way, Seth, I totally agree with you on that one. 100% with you. Make it easier for everyone.
Yep.
Robin, your thoughts? What are we not getting right?
Basically, I'm thinking the same as the other two. It's an old example, but certainly to the public, we used to be stressing, make sure you back things up, get everything online, get backups of things, and then the celebrity nude pictures incident happened, and everybody went, "What? You put all your pictures on the cloud on a data service somewhere on somebody else's computer?" That's what we've been telling people to do for years, and then they do it, and then it's their fault when it gets hacked, if it was hacked or whatever. But it's sort of, we've got to come up with recommendations that, like you said, people can follow, but then not put people down later if they do follow them, and it turns out we've got it wrong rather than them.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting too because so you mentioned, the celebrity photo is being leaked. For one, it was kind of like everyone kind of actually paid attention. And then, sort of the questions of, okay, well, our recommendations are this, and does that actually fall in line? And was that good advice? But I know I'd seen an episode of John Oliver, and he was talking to Edward Snowden. And, during that, he had interviewed people in New York, or prior to that, he had interviewed folks in New York, and sort of like, hey, nobody knew really what happened with Edward Snowden. Nobody knew what happened with data being stolen. But when they said, okay, well, how much do you care about naked photos of you being, the government collecting naked photos of you? Then everybody had a huge problem with it, right? Up until that point, nobody cared. But it's just that direct sense of privacy being infringed upon that everyone seemed to care about. So.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So anything else before I move this question over to Rob?
No, that was it. It is just awareness. We've got to get awareness. We've got to get the correct awareness, and not put people down if we get it wrong.
Interesting. Rob, I'm going to pass this question over to you. And if you have any thoughts on also how, if any of you have any thoughts on how we can actually better increase awareness, other than, short of stealing private pictures of people, or telling them that can be done. Like, what other ideas are out there for sure? But Rob, what are we not getting right?
Sure. So I'll start off with saying that, along with Chris, I had a real big eye opener when I got into a internal red team, and I'm like, why can't you patch this thing on the SCADA system? Well, because we don't have a new one until 20 years from now, right? So like giving recommendations on things as simple as turning off Telnet is something that'll happen in 15 years from when I first recommended it, and going back and pen testing the exact same device was dumb. So me recommending that as an external team and not understanding that's the life cycle of these things was the biggest eye opener. And secondly, I'm going to call BS on all the awareness talking so far, because I just hate that we're putting the onus on someone being secure on the users. I hate it via phishing. I hate it via general awareness. I think that our awareness projects that we have in different businesses that teach people how to find phishing emails is dumb, because no one really cares, and they shouldn't have to care. It's not their job to be a secure employee. It's our job as security professionals to make sure that what they're doing for the company that makes money for the company is done automatically in a secure way to enable them to do it faster, better, and more secure. It really pisses me off and gets under my skin when people talk about, well, we need more awareness. We need people to do better, at finding these phishing emails that we were supposed to catch with our phishing product that we've spent $1 million on. They should catch these things. It just gets under my skin. So I think we need to be a bit more introspective and say that we're doing things wrong for these things to actually happen.
But don't you think it's useful as a layer if the public or staff or whatever are at least aware of things happening?
Sure, it would be nice that they were aware, but putting user awareness as something that we do, I think is dumb. Just personally, I think that they should continue on with their lives. Anything that makes the news, great. Anything that gets in the news, awesome. Whatever. That's just ancillary. If something happens, we should look at ourselves and the community in general and just the industry of security and say we screwed up.
Interesting. So your thoughts are that essentially, if we are doing our jobs correctly, the technology we build to protect people from their own, ignorance, for lack of a better word, that should be really doing its job, and not us relying on the knowledge of Seth's grandma, we'll say, to protect herself.
Right. So think about it as a crane operator. If I'm a crane operator, my job is to operate that crane. If the mechanic who checked that out, the security professional who checked that crane out to make sure that it was good to go, didn't do his job correctly, I as the crane operator could kill people, right? So just to go really way off the side here, like think about it in that aspect. So the user, the crane operator, who's using the crane, could literally kill people because the crane isn't correctly maintained. So if we put that in the security context, it's the same thing. We're expecting the crane operator to know exactly that his crane is operating incorrectly. While that is a benefit if this guy knows his device well enough that he knows when things are kind of operating hinky, he's not the mechanic.
Yeah, and I mean to play devil's advocate, the crane operator's licensed to actually use the crane, right?
Yep.
So he may not know how to work on every component, but he kind of has a general understanding of how to use it properly, at least if it's working correctly. And I'm not saying that should be something we send everybody through. Every user through some basic security course or something like that, or some But do you? I mean, I guess where the only problem I have with that is like there's always the human factor in security, right? We all know that. And to what degree can we really, fix that with technology?
Sure. So let's go with the phishing example. So someone's going to click that email, no matter what. Um, Tests upon tests upon tests throughout security pen testing have proven that someone somewhere will click the link, no matter what. So what happens when they click the link? Let's walk down that. When they click the link, they go to this malicious website. Great. Okay, so our proxy has failed to stop this. That's not a big problem because our filtering isn't set up correctly or whatever. That's one step that we could have gotten better, but whatever. So they go to this site and something happens in Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer crashes and gives the attacker a shell. So that's where second place we've failed is that this thing isn't patched. We've already identified that that's hard to secure. Got it. We have to stay up to date. ODAs are the problem, right? So then malicious code somehow executes on the machine and talks out. If it can't talk out to the internet or some kind of C2, then even if the malicious user or malicious attacker has done everything right, dumped an ODA, gotten through our proxy somehow to get on an approved list, if they can't actually do their command and control, they're SOL. Then I don't care if someone clicks links. They can click links all day. It's never going to work anything. So if we have them going through corporate proxies or stuff like that, I'm not talking about home users. Home users are different. I'm talking about company users. If we have, if we do our jobs correctly at those steps, I don't care if they click links.
Right. Understood. Yeah, it's not an easy problem to solve. I think we can all agree on that. Any other thoughts from any folks before I'm kind of going to shift it real quick to some more benign questions? We have about 9 minutes left, and there's some things I think that it would benefit people to know. So, are there any other thoughts before I move on? All right, and thank you, Rob, by the way, and everyone else. Appreciate that. Good insights. So I kind of take away from that. Some would say awareness, some would say accessibility, and some would say we just need to do a better job with our technology and implementation. Okay, so the question I'm going to ask each one of you is, and this is sort of started with a conversation with Chris before this panel. Top 1 to 3 books, just maximum of 3 books, but the top 3 books we'll say that you would recommend to security folks. I'll start with Chris. We haven't talked in a while.
Okay. So I had 2. The first one was The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim. And so why I think everyone should read that is it's to help you understand the ideas behind DevOps and workflows and all that, but also so we don't become the security guy that's in the book who's really just a problem creator and not a problem solver. That kind of really resonated home with me when I read that. And the second book is 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. And I think that's why I think people should read that because he goes into really good detail like what makes a good startup and what's a good idea. Basically, does that idea go from 0 to 1, right? Is it a problem like Google solved, or was it a problem that's only iterating on a technology that's already partially solved? And I think that's interesting from who to invest in, what technologies are interesting to look at, or just why some places behave in ways that they do. So
yeah,
that's the 2 that
I would second your I haven't read 0 to 1, but the Phoenix Project, I would second that one. That's a great book. It gives you the full picture. Okay, so Robin, top 1 to 3 books that you would recommend.
Unfortunately, I can't really answer this because I'm not a technology book reader. I tend to prefer getting away from technology if I'm sitting down reading. So I'm more fantasy and sci-fi kind of reader. But the one that the couple that I have read in the last couple of years, I did Palmy Olson's book on Anonymous, and I'm slowly working my way through Zero Day, the one on Stuxnet. So that's interesting, but it's just because of the way I tend to read things, it's a slow read at the moment.
Yeah, I'm writing those
They're the
down.
only two tech books that I have read recently.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and check those out. Haven't heard or read either of those. So that sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, the Palmy Olson's a big red book, and it is quite a nice, easy read. It's a good one.
Fantastic. Seth, top 1 to 3 books.
Yeah, I only have 2 listed. And I mean, they're books that we've actually discussed before, Ken. But top of my list is probably Drive. Right now, just understanding motivation, your own motivation. How you actually get up for the day and do something that's interesting to you. It was quite eye-opening as far as what's a carrot, what's a stick, and what actually drives people to do things at work, right? The second is Rework. Both of those, that one makes you kind of rethink how you're actually developing things, developing projects, and pushing stuff out to the wider world. But definitely Drive's the top of my list. I mean, there's all the technical manuals, but I think most of us are pretty good at Google and figuring things out via blogs and other things like that. So it's kind of nice to take a step back and look at some of the more esoteric topics from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I totally. Drive is one of my favorite books as of like the last, I'd say this year. That was definitely my favorite book of this that I've read this year. So, can be pretty game changing. Let's see, Rob, top 1 to 3 books. Okay,
So I'm going to break the rules a little bit here.
Okay.
My top 2 sets of books are the Iron Druid Chronicles, as well as the Dresden Files, because I'm also a fantasy book reader and I love those. So Iron Druid and Dresden Files. But if we're talking about just technical books, there's 3 books that I continuously go back to and reference and go back to and always are on my desk somewhere. Is the Grey Hacker's Handbook, and they have a bunch of new editions, or Grey Hat Hacking, I'm sorry, and they have a bunch of editions. The Hacking the Art of Exploitation, again, a bunch of editions. I think I have all of them on both of those, as well as the Red Team Field Manual, RTFM, which is a $9 book on Amazon, which is awesome. It's just a list of commands that I pretty much always have on me. And then the final one to change thinking around a little bit is Super Crunchers. Some of the big data analysis that I've done for my Deep Magic project has been direct result of some of the ideas and concepts they talked about in Super Crunchers. And then finally, Rework. I'll definitely reiterate that is a great book to read. Sorry, not to 1 to 3 or even all tech books, but that's my list.
No, I mean, I think, as you progress in your career or, in life, or maybe just, I mean, it shouldn't, I'm a big believer you shouldn't just focus on purely tech. You should probably focus on everything. And so something like Rework makes a lot of sense. I did want to clarify with Super Crunchers. Is this the Why Thinking by Numbers is a New Way to Be Smart by Ian Ayers?
Yep.
Or Ayers? Okay. All right. So I'm going to take a question from the. Well, actually, I'm sorry. We are about at our time limit. I think I will try to ask one more question here from. I'll throw it out. Does anybody? There was a question from the audience member about the DMCA. Did anyone have any thoughts on good or bad towards DMCA, the copyright technology? No? Okay, well, if you change your mind, then we'll cover that. Let's see here. Actually, I do want to ask this question before we go. It shouldn't take too long, or maybe it'll take 5 to 10 minutes, but that's fine. Does anyone want to answer the question of, does the public really care about cybersecurity? I think we talked a little bit about awareness, but I'll just go one by one. You can do yes, no, or just however you want to answer it. So, Seth, does the public care about cybersecurity?
No, they don't. I agree with Rob on that, right? If we're doing our job right, they shouldn't have to care about it. But the fact that we haven't done our job up to this point is the problem that I see. But in general, no, they don't.
Okay, Chris, do you think folks care about security?
Only if the NSA can see their dick pics.
Yeah, I tried to skirt that and be nice in the way that I said it, but yeah, that was pretty much yeah.
Sorry to ruin your rating for the podcast.
No. It's good. I can't say it, but you can, certainly.
I think so. To add to that a little bit, I think no. I think we've seen from a lot of these breaches, at least from how companies perform stock-wise, they may take a small hit for a little while, but none of these companies that have suffered any massive data breaches, at least from a stock and investing side of things, none of them have taken some financial hits. So to me, that says that no, at least a giant community of investors don't care. So you can do really bad security, get breached, and within a couple months you'll be just fine, which is sad.
Okay. And Rob, your thoughts, and before I move on to Robin and close this out.
Just concur all around. Everyone's already said everything. So.
All right. And Robin, any thoughts?
I'd say they care for the 5-10 minutes that whatever big breach hits the news, and then they go back to forgetting about it and not really worrying.
Yeah. No, I mean, between all the Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield breaches, and at this point, I think most people are pretty certain their data's out there. I mean, I don't know that. Obviously, I don't have any metrics around that, but from folks I know that aren't security folks, they're like, yeah, someone's probably got my data. Best I can do is, keep a lock on my identity, use one of these identity services and make sure that, fraud's not occurring. But beyond that, whatever.
Everyone's pretty numb to it as well, right, at this point.
Yeah. Sorry, can you say that again?
The public is just numb to the data breaches. Right? It happens so frequently that it's not a surprise anymore. We're aghast for a day, and then we're back to not caring.
Well, yeah, I don't really have anything to follow up on that, but yeah, it can, I mean, I kind of get that sense. But on a brighter note, I appreciate everyone contributing on this panel, all of you for attending out there. Apologies if we could not get to your questions. I know we had just kind of flooded there towards the end with questions. Thanks again, everyone. And we're going to post this video up on the SecCast website probably by late this week or early next week. So once again, thanks, everyone. And thank you, panelists, for attending or for being part of this.